Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Trident's Marketing Communication Manager, Daniel Sloan, and we're excited to be bringing you today's Culture of Research and Education webinar called Navigating a Doctoral Program, Faculty and Graduate Advice. The core webinar series is designed to provide faculty, students, and alumni an opportunity to share their research and scholarship with the Trident community. By fostering a culture of professional development and idea exchange, participants will have access to a valuable forum for lifelong learning. This university-wide effort is coordinated by Trident's Doctoral Studies Directors. Before we get into the introductions and the presentation, just a few notes. I'm sure a lot of you will have questions, and you're welcome to ask questions at any time. Just find the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, go about halfway down to the question box, and type your questions in there. Unfortunately, attendees are not able to speak their questions, and the raising hand function is a less effective way to get our attention. Just your comments, your questions, just send them in that question box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded, and all attendees will receive a link to the webinar and a copy of the slides by the end of the week. Today's session is going to be presented by two people. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Allison Deegan. If I get this remember correctly, she's full-time faculty, and she works on quite a few dissertation and doctoral studies committees. I almost forgot the DSP, since that's sort of new for us. She has nearly 20 years of experience in public education administration and nonprofit leadership, and she is quite talented when it comes to writing. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Joshua Yancey, a recent Trident EDD graduate. Welcome, Josh. He has quite a lot of business expertise, over 15 years of experience in transformative organizational practices, and he received a master's in business management and leadership from Liberty University. Welcome, Dr. Deegan, and welcome, Dr. Yancey. Going to hand things off to Dr. Deegan to begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Dan. I just want to, off the bat, say a little bit about, we're gonna be talking about transfer students and transferring in, but really this content is applicable to, in many ways, to all doctoral students, because anyone coming into a doctoral program is coming in new, to a new culture, to new expectations, things of that sort. So what I say about transferring, don't feel like if you're not a transfer student, it doesn't apply to you. And in your questions that you reach out to us, believe me, we want to hear universal questions. It's really the focus on how to help doctoral students succeed. When you're transferring, however, it's the same as when you're applying anew. You're evaluating the program. What does it do for you? What special aspects does it have? How does it fit in your life? I would say nearly all of the doctoral students that I have worked with are also working full time. So that's a bit of an unusual approach to doctoral study versus a typical PhD student is often focused full time on the PhD and is a teaching assistant or a professor or whatever. But doctoral students that I work with tend to be working, so we're managing a lot. And I think in the beginning and then throughout, you always have to be very clear about your reasons for why you're doing it, why you're applying, why you're attending, why you're transferring in to this school in particular, so that the work doesn't roll over you. The work is unending until the moment when you're done, and Josh can talk a little bit about that because he just went through it. The work never lets up. There's no easy period when you're getting a doctorate. It's a big thing, and you have to make that adjustment. There's going to be a significant amount of time and money invested on your part, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from. This is not an easy proposition. It's not a quick proposition, and it requires a significant investment. I think it's a great investment in yourself, your career, and the work you will do, but it's real. You can't pretend it's not something that requires a lot of deliberation. When you come in as a transfer student, I think you particularly have uncertainty about when you're going to finish because you had an experience at another school where you didn't finish. So the prospect of not finishing is there in the air. Students that apply and are just starting a doctoral program or in midstream, believe me, they have that same uncertainty as well. It seems almost impossible until it is. And the great thing about the Trident program, the Trident approach, is it's componentized in a way to really help you succeed. the way we organize the courses, how they intersect, the way we organize the modules, and how we give you components of this giant thing you have to do, the doctoral study or the dissertation, in a way that you really can tackle them bit by bit, weave them all together, and then you'll succeed. For transfer students in particular, they do have to pick themselves up and they have to start over with a new team and a new school, a new culture, and that can be very hard. And some of the things we'll say later, we just want to caution you to take advantage of the resources that are here if that's the process that you're in. And as with all students, a new culture, it takes time. It's not like undergrad, I can guarantee you, and it's not like your master's program. Even if you wrote an extensive thesis, it's just very different. In the doctoral study, much of what we talk about is leadership. Much of what we talk about is systemic change. And you have to be an agent of that. You have to participate in those discussions and link your individual study to those broader themes as we go forward. It's not only about you, it's about how you fit in with the broader scope of the discipline that you work in. And it's a culture shift, nothing short of that. So next. Now Josh is, he's representative of many things. He is a transfer student. He did work full-time while going through his doctoral program. He has a family to attend to. He's not alone. So, other people are looking at him for his time. And he's a recent graduate who just defended his dissertation. So he transferred in, went to doctoral study while working full-time, and now has succeeded. So I'd love for him to say a little bit about his journey and how that went.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Deegan, and I can't thank you enough. Dr. Deegan was my chair, and so that's why when we're communicating here today, you're going to hear a lot of back and forth as we interact, and it's going to seem natural because it has been, which is one of the greatest things about Trident, is the personal touch that I believe as a student that I received when I transferred into the program. In fact, some of the issues that I had at a previous university, and maybe some of you experienced this as well, but some things that led to hurdles for me that felt like they were inhibitors towards my progress, things like a moving target, things like empty promises. At least that was my experience. That may not be yours, but that was mine. And the intangible, invisible doctoral committee and invisible chairperson that would take 30 to 60 days to return something, and you could never get a real viable piece of information to help you progress, or at least that was my situation. And so I had been in the program, and Dr. Deegan, please feel free to interrupt me and move on at any time. But very briefly,
I don't know where you get one of those invisible chair people. I'd like to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me tell you, it's
cloak of invisibility.
Yeah, well, students don't get very far with those, which was my circumstance. And I would try and write, but the target kept moving, and I would never had definitive dates on when I would receive back any kind of feedback for my work. And so it's hard to progress that way, isn't it? That was my story. So after 6 years of this, 6 years, we had 7 deaths in our family. I had moved across the continent for a different job. All the cultural things that Dr. Deegan spoke about just a minute ago, I was dealing with in my own life. And so, and trying to finish the dissertation, plus my chair people kept getting changed. My committee kept getting changed. My chairperson continually was changing. And so that led to some of the issues that I had. But I finally had made a decision to move on from that school, and it was very difficult for me because I felt like I was going to lose all of my work, and certainly I did lose some of it. I mean, facts are facts, and I had to move on, but I didn't lose all of it, because when I found Trident and they networked me with who I think is a fantastic chair, and that's Dr. Deegan. She's here on the call with us. When you have the right chair, then you have the ability to be able to take your existing work and mold it and shape it into something that's going to be workable for the future. You've done all this hard work, don't let it go to waste. And so I was able to take what I had, reshape it, reformat it, write some things that were new. That's true. But because I had a good chair and a good committee, I was able to move forward. And I found Trident really just through a web search, but I had no idea that when I pursued Trident, that they would pursue me back. I thought I was just going to be a number, but it didn't feel like that to me. I felt like a real student. Dr. Deegan, the reason why she named all of those things before about Josh had a family to look after, he had a job. It's because we communicate a lot. She knows about my life because I was able to talk to her, because the dissertation is not just the paper that you're writing. You need somebody that's ready to walk with you through a journey, because that's what the doctoral process really is. This is not some paper you're writing to be chalked up and forgotten about later. This is a piece of your life that you're dealing with. And so that's what I found so incredibly valuable about Trident, was the personal relationship that was provided that helped you walk through the journey. And that's a large part of why I was successful and was able to defend my dissertation very recently and become Dr. Josh Yancey. Dr. Deegan, do you have anything to add to that at all?
I would say that my approach is pretty hands-on. We are an all online university. We are asynchronous, but what you may not know, if you're thinking of applying, or if you've just started a doctoral program, that after you finish your coursework and you're working on your doctoral study or your dissertation, you don't have any classmates anymore. It's just you and your chair and then your committee. So you really feel alone when you're used to having those classmates, you're used to having the discussion boards and all of that. So I think it's really important to keep the student engaged. I was a doctoral student myself at one point, and I tried very hard to hide from my chair. So I know the feeling. If your work isn't perfect, you don't want to show it. If you're not done yet, if something in your life has happened. So there is an instinct to kind of shrink away, and you don't have classmates and you don't have assignment requirements similar to a regular course that will drag you in. So I chase after my students, whether they like it or not. I do chase after them, and I find that getting to know them and getting to know what they're dealing with is critical for me to keep them on track, because you have to allow people have lives. You can't say, well, I don't care about your family tragedy or your health condition, because we do, those are real, but we have to figure out a way to push beyond it. We have to figure out a way to get some work done for this period until we get onto that period. I had a doctoral student ask me one time, it's not really funny, it's rather very, very bittersweet, where she said, Dr. Deegan, am I cursed? Are doctoral students cursed? And what she meant was, so much is happening while I'm trying to get this dissertation. And I had to point out to her, you have no time. That's why it's happening. All those days when you used to help everyone and you'd run the church potluck and you'd pick the kids up and you'd do the laundry and you'd cook Thanksgiving dinner and everything and be a lead on the project at work. You have no more time for any of that stuff. You have to give all your time to this, to the degree humanly possible. We still have to go to work, we still have to do our family, but you have to almost steal that time. So when some tragedy hits or one big challenge comes along, all your coping skills are directed toward your dissertation. So it's not that you're cursed, it's that you are really stretched for time. The great news, which I tell all of my students, is that it's not forever. It will be over.
That's right.
Everyone will forgive you when you come back to your regular life after this incredible achievement. But for now, it does require that extraordinary focus.
I totally agree. We might even talk about that a little bit later, but that was a consideration that I had to. That was a consideration that I had to understand as I was coming into Trident. And Dr. Deegan repeated something she said to me early on, and I'd heard that before, and I knew that, but making it a reality is something that you have to do. And so you only get 24 hours in a day. And so you have to be able to let something go and concentrate on this. And as Dr. Deegan said, it is temporary, but without that temporary commitment, you will not hit the finish line. But I can guarantee you, if you make the temporary sacrifice, and that's what it is 100% a sacrifice, then you will make it to the finish line. And I'm a 7-year doctoral student telling you this. It will happen. That was one of my main considerations for going to Trident, was someone who could be realistic and transparent and help walk with me through the process and help keep me, serve as a form of accountability, really. I will also add this about Trident. The application and admissions process, by the way, was silky smooth. I mean, it was very, very simple. They want you to be a student, and not because they just want another number, but they want to help students achieve their goals. Now, that's a big difference from other universities who are just looking for the almighty dollar. The Trident really partners with students to help them complete the degree that they are seeking, but it won't come free. I mean, you're going to have to put the time in for sure. I think one of the things that helped me develop a lot of confidence in the educational process was that right out the gate, Dr. Deegan and the school addressed my main concerns, which were the moving target. I wanted to understand the outline and have a framework that I could write in and know that I was going to be okay, that I wasn't going to receive some kind of moving target. It's not that things won't change, by the way. It's not that when you connect with your dissertation committee or your doctoral chair, they have no holds barred. They're going to be, you want them to mark things up and help you become a better writer. You want them to help you frame your writing toward the end goal, which is dissertation completion and adding value, adding new knowledge to the field, of course. But you have to be flexible in that. But at the same time, you're not going to have the issue of just chasing the air and not knowing where the finish line really is. So they addressed that for me. There were no empty promises with Trident. What you see is what you get. And I loved that no nonsense approach about the university. And then, of course, like I've said before, my chair was great. And so those were things that really helped me develop confidence in the educational process. And I would encourage all of you in that as well.
Next. So again, this applies to all doctoral students in my experience, myself included, when I was, those many years ago when I was a doctoral student, and for transfer students as well. It's very emotional, as we said. There's a lot of fear to say, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. Sure, it's a good idea, you can plan, but the day you're at the bottom, it does seem impossible. And you focus on other people's tales of success, other people's tales of failure, it can really get in your head. But you have to find someone to trust. First, it's the admission staff and your dean, who's part of the process of bringing you in. And no one's bringing you in so you can fail. It just doesn't happen in my experience here. We're bringing you in to bring you up, to bring your work up, to bring it out in the world and make it sing. So when you get through that process, you'll start to find the people that you can trust. Most importantly, I think it will be your chair. And your life is not going to stop. You can wish it did. You can I'm taking a month off from work. Like, it just never works out that way. Oh, I have the summer off because I teach and I'll get it all done in the summer. I'll do it all day Sunday, right? How many times have I heard that? It just doesn't work that way. It's ongoing and it's relentless until you're done. The good news is you get done, so it does happen. You do get through, but you're very anxious when you transfer in to get done as quick as humanly possible. As with Josh, I often have to slow you down, not slow you down to the point of keeping you in limbo. We don't do that here, but we have to slow you down so that you are guaranteed to succeed. If your study needs to shift, it needs to shift. And the time that it takes for it to shift is the time that it takes for it to shift. I always liken it to a cup of tea. How long does a cup of tea take? As long as it takes, right? Depending on what you need, depending on what you want, depending on the temperature, a lot of things. You can't say 30 seconds and it's perfect for everyone. It's not that way. Some students definitely take longer. Sometimes pandemic hits your test site, your study site, and things happen. So we're used to rolling with a lot of things, but my job is to set the student up for success and intersect that with what they are very passionate about, because you can't really do this if you're not passionate. But you may need academic support when you come in. We may need to rejigger certain things. We may need to get you additional help or editing support. We focus a lot on writing and the strength of your writing, how that leads the findings that you gather in your dissertation and how you analyze it. So writing is really important. And some students who, whether they transfer in or they're Trident students who are beginning, just haven't had the same experience with the standards of writing. So we bring them up. That's what we work on. And as we said before, new culture, new systems, new expectations, new people. I was lucky enough in my doctoral program to go through with a cohort of 25. And it was an extraordinary amount of support for me that was consistent from day one till graduation and continues to this day. So most students will not have that. So you have to make your own cohort. You have to find your own cohort in addition to your chair so that you have support as you go through the process. Do you have anything to add here, Josh?
The only thing I would add to that, first of all, you're right on with that, Dr. D. The only thing I would add to that, something that you mentioned about passion. There really needs to be you're with them. You're what's in it for me. You really have to go back and remember that fiery passion, the reason why you started with this. What deep down inside drove you to strive for the doctoral journey? Something you didn't just wake up one day and go, oh, I just think I'll I'll be a doctor today, and we'll flip a switch and that's it. I mean, something inside of you said you felt you were inspired. Maybe it was a speech, maybe it was a teacher that changed your life when you were younger. I don't know what the WIFM is. I don't know what you want to do with your doctorate. I don't know. But what I do know is this: you have to have a heavy dose of passion, and you might be like I was. You know, I was 6 years, man, 6 years on this journey without finishing. And some of you might be in that same boat. And I had to reach deep down inside and think to myself, why did I want to do this in the first place? Well, for me, I wanted to make change. I want to change the world. I want to do something. I want to do something different. I want to add value. That's my WIFM. I want to add value. And I knew that this was a major milestone of accomplishment in order to do that. But you have to reach deep down inside and find that passion, that desire, and rekindle that a little bit. When you transfer over and you're starting over again, transferring into a new university, you have to understand your own WIFM. What's in it for me? It's a likely, better financial opportunity, committees, organizations you're going to be a part of that you're not able to do without the doctorate. I mean, it's just the way it is. There's more value you can add.
I never heard the term WIFM, but I call the doctorate, no matter what your discipline is, I call it a shut up credential, because what it does is it gets you in rooms, it gets you at tables, it gets you into policy discussions that you are normally not invited into. And that's exactly part of the reason why we do what we do. Yeah.
Absolutely, but find that passion, desire, and temper that, balance it with the understanding that, you know what, you're gonna have to work your tail end off to get this thing done. There's no more I'm gonna put in 30 minutes a week. I mean, you're gonna transfer into the school and get this thing done. You can be passionate all day, but passion without the work supporting it is just a dream. So you need to have both.
Next. This is a big one. Before you are working with your chair, it can seem elusive. Like, who is this person going to be? How am I going to find them? How will they know what I want to do? It seems like it's a very difficult thing to connect. In fact, it operates really organically. You need to find the right person, the right fit, and build a relationship with them. And as Josh said, the key is developing that deep trust. And it doesn't mean you're going to like everything your chair is guiding you and urging you to do. It doesn't mean your chair is going to like everything that you're like, but this is my passion, I have to do it. We respect that we both have to meet in the middle, that I have to get you through and you have to love what you're doing. There's no way to phone it in. It's just too hard. The good news is, when looking for chairs, especially at a school like Trident, you don't have to work with me if you've done exactly what I do or what I'm researching. Under the broader fields in all of the colleges, you can find a connection with a chair who can guide you and give you excellent advice and really help your work be enhanced and sing when it gets out to the field, even if they don't work in the area that you're researching. So don't get hung up on that. I think in a more traditional PhD program at some other universities, that match with your chair is very, very important. And we don't need to do that here. We're doing applied research, we're doing applied degrees, we're getting out in the field, and you just need someone who's going to be supportive, who knows the system, who's going to hold you to really, really high standards, because there's no other way to get through here, and who's going to have those ideas to get your work out into the field. We don't want it sitting on a shelf and being of no use to anybody. This isn't hazing. This isn't just getting through. This is getting through to go do something with it, and that starts with the chair.
That's right.
You do need to match, however, in terms of working style, approaches to academic research. We don't want anyone having conflict. We don't want you to feel that you can't go to your chair, that you're trying to go around your chair. It just doesn't work that way. Excuse me. So it's a relationship like any other. This is a professional relationship in which the personal becomes a big factor. It's like, going into your boss's office and explaining all the challenges of your life. In some workplaces, that's taboo. In others, hey, that's the way they operate. So it's somewhere in the middle there. Your chair has to know what you're going through. I don't need to know your personal business or your medical records or anything like that, but I need to know what's impacting your work, what's impacting your time for it, and then I can be supportive. So that's what you're on the hunt for. Somebody, they may have been a professor in a class you had, or you may just have looked up their bio or watched the webinar and said, wow, I have a sense of that person. So you reach out to them and you start to inquire whether they can connect with you. You need to be prepared to tell them about your research. But once that relationship is in place, it's usually going to be the key for you moving forward. And Josh?
I totally agree. I don't really have anything else to add to that. I mean, you said it all. I think that it's just so important to make the decision first and understand and know that you're coming into a university that wants to help you succeed. That is so paramount for you to understand, because well, speaking from just my personal experience, that's just not always the case. It's just not. But
And
when
I
you
do
come
see
into
that here. I see
Trident,
that here, and especially with the dean that I
mhm,
work directly with, um, Dr. Heidi Smith, Dean of the College of Education. That was my vetting, right? Because I had to screen Trident on the way in too when I got here. And I'm very, very much in belief that that system to support students is here, especially doctoral students. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the success rate that we have, and the success rate is significant. So next.
absolutely, totally agree.
Yeah, this is, again, geared more toward transfer students, but anyone starting something new, right? It's not like your master's program. It's not like undergrad. If you're transferring in from another university, it is likely some things seem the same. We have message boards, we have modules, we have content, we have this, we have that, but some things are very, very different. And it really does behoove you. I've heard from numerous transfer students, well, that's not the way, and I'm like, stop right there. You're here now. This is the way we do it now. It's not designed to upend you and confuse you and make you not know how to get your email or whatever. It's designed to bring you in to this culture, to this system, because all the components of it have been set up for you to succeed. So if you fight that because it's new, it's like when they ask you to learn new software. Your brain first says no, and then the next thing you know, you're clicking away at it and you're learning it. I would say embrace the new sooner rather than later if that's a challenge for you. And then it goes back to those trusted resources, whether it's your student advisor, whether it's the dean, whether it's your chair or your classmates or your colleagues. As you go forward, make sure that you have that connection, that you have that support so that you can get over those humps of transiting in, transferring in, or starting anew with this new culture, if you will. And everything that I do, and I'm sure my colleagues are the same, everything that I do is designed to make your study better, to make it doable for you to be able to get done and get your work out to the field. Not that it is, I see a typo that says file, there should be field, out into the field. And that means the academic standards are very high. Otherwise, everyone would have a doctorate, right? It's not like undergrad. It's hard to do. It's a huge commitment. It's a piece of scholarship that's unique. And the standards for that outside in the world are very high. In Trident, they're higher still, because we know that we want your work to be useful in the world. We want it to be able to connect with people. So the new environment is going to put all of that on you. And I would just say, be patient. The system is designed for you to succeed. It's not designed to tweak you or annoy you or make you uncomfortable, but you will feel those feelings, absolutely, until you learn, until you get it, until you have that support of either classmates, professors, chair. You'll feel that tension, and I want you to push through it, because we are all here so that your work can be done and your work can be spectacular. Otherwise, why are we here, right? So that's built in implicitly, but you've got to get through the newness factor. Josh?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm so sorry. I unintentionally cut you off there, Doctor. I would also add, and just to really encourage the listeners or the viewers today, honestly, there's an old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. And so the way I've always received that meaning was, I can't see the big picture because I'm getting lost in these individual details. Man, you have got to get over that. I mean, now. You have to be able to lay that stuff down and move on, walk over it, build a bridge and get over it. I'm serious. You have to be able to say, this is the new way, so I'm going to adapt to these details that are different. I know it's uncomfortable, I get it, but it shouldn't be uncomfortable for very long, because the bigger picture, the forest, is this. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to get this doctorate. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to go out in the world and I'm going to add value so I can make these changes internally. It's a personal issue if we can't get through these changes, because the university has designed the programs to help the students succeed. Why wouldn't you want to adapt? So I just encourage you, if those are hangups, just take some mental note and just be ready to lay down whatever those hangups are and move forward, because you can 100% do this. Absolutely. you have anything else to add to that, Doctor?
No, one thing I would say is, even though we may have the same approach being all online as other universities, you know, the technology shifts, the technology is different. And you may have to learn a different way of having a discussion or a different way of requesting this, requesting that. So just don't let those little things tweak you. And again, anyone who can support you is an email or a phone call away. So I would focus on that as you start your doctoral journey or as you transfer in. Next. I may have said some of this earlier, so I apologize for that. But I mean, we are focusing on the chair. The chair is on your side. You will bump heads with your chair. You will disagree, and you have to believe, which I emphasize all the time. You have to believe. I'm trying to get you through. I'm trying to get you done. And I have a phrase that I use all the time. I say, I'm sure I said this to Josh, where I say, that's a great study for Dr. Yancey. And when Dr. Yancey is done, he can do that study. Not a great study for student Yancey, because student Yancey has to scope it and plan it and get the logistics aligned so that you can get done. And sometimes that means your dream study that you've been thinking about your whole life has to be scaled back. Believe me, trust me when I say it is never scaled back to a point where it's no longer important. It must be important, but it must be doable. So that's one of the main things that your chair does. And if you have an issue, I said, whether it's with your chair, whether it's with Trident, whether it's a deadline, sometimes there are financial aid challenges that come up, get help early. Don't sit there and flounder. Don't be afraid. Don't try to be invisible. It doesn't really work. We know you're there and we're looking for you. We're looking to engage with you. So let's cure the problems right away. One of the biggest mistakes that I made myself, I fully admit it, is I didn't want to show my chair my work because it wasn't perfect. So I was stuck. I was in paralysis, and he had to guide me out of that very, very compassionately, right? So when you come in as a transfer, you've got this whole thing. You've got to let somebody see it. You've got to let your chair evaluate it so they can make a plan for where you are, what has to shift, what's usable, what's not. And if you're a new student coming into a doctoral program, believe me, I don't think you're able to get admitted without a plan for what you want to study. So you've got to vet that with your chair, with your professors, and you've got to figure out how can you get this done as close as possible to the area that you're very passionate about. We talked a little bit about managing your life. What I like to say is you have to be a time warrior, and you have to steal time from everyone and everything. There's no other way. You can't do this in your spare time only. It requires too much. So that's not to scare you. It's just for this period, you've got to commit, and you've got to not do all those things you normally do to the degree, you know, we still have to go to work. We can't quit our jobs. I know that, but you've just got to be that time warrior and really be focused on taking time, including self-care time, because that's real too, right? And then as well, especially for you transfer students, when you get to Trident, things could change. It's the world. Look what's happening with the pandemic. If you predicted that in January, then, you know, you're a soothsayer. Who knew? So it's shifted, especially for K-12, shifted it 100%. Higher ed, it shifted it somewhat, where everyone's doing classes online, but not quite the same challenge as educating K-12 students, right? And all the caretaking issues and all of that. So who could have known? Things will shift, and we have to keep rolling. We have to keep going forward. We have to adapt. And if things change because your chair needs them to change, as I said earlier, you have to trust that they're trying to set you up for success. And that's what it's all about. And you have to be resilient. What I like to tell everybody, it goes for doctoral students, is the advice you need to give to yourself when things are tough, when these things are shifting, when, oh my God, what did I do? You have to give the advice that you would give to your most cherished friend and say, what do you need to hear? How can I support you? Who can you get help from? And you are that cherished friend to yourself. So don't have another set of advice that applies to you and you'd tell Josh something different. You wouldn't tell Josh, well, it's tough, you might as well give up. No, you'd say, here's what you need to do. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Step one, step two, help from here, help from there. Tell that to yourself. And that should be an ongoing dialogue with your chair and with your student advisor so that they understand what you're going through. And it's not a catalog of, you know, the dog ate my homework or here are all my excuses. It doesn't work that way. It's what are you dealing with now? What do we have to do as a result, right? How do we morph? How do we fix? How do we reshape? How do we change the timing? What do we have to do as a result? And for that, you need to trust some people. You need to be clear about what's going on. You need to be truthful about your capacity, and you need to trust someone so we can find those solutions. Yeah. Next, I think we have Josh has something to say.
Oh man, listen, I'm excited to share these rules for success. I really feel like between Dr. Deegan and myself, we could probably have 25 slides full of like tips and tricks, I think, for you. But I'm thankful because Dr. Deegan just gave to you some advice that she gave to me. I was a paying student when she gave me that advice. You get to hear it for free right now, so take advantage of it. I hope you're taking notes. I think you're going to get this deck a little bit later, but just be sure to take note of those things. Those are words of wisdom, and I hope that these are for you as well, because I came in as a student. And I'm sorry to repeat myself here, but I just want to emphasize 6 years before I went to Trident, I was a 6-year student at a different university, 6 long, tedious years, and then I finished out in just a little over 7 after I transferred to TU. One of the, and probably the linchpin for everything else, is rule number 1, listen to your chair. And I know that I've said it, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the TU webinar and I was invited to co-host with Dr. D. I'm not saying it because of that, okay? I'm saying it because, you know what, it works, and it's legitimate. It's good, sound advice. Listen to your chair. It doesn't matter if you disagree with how they want you to craft the second part of your literature review. Do the work, okay? Do the work, because they already are thinking 10 steps ahead in your writing. They know, and if you need to ask why, ask the question, they'll tell you. So don't be afraid to ask questions, but listen to what your chair says. Number 2, create, and this is, I cannot underscore this enough in terms of importance, but create a project plan, like a template. Include a scope of all of your dissertation tasks, your milestones, the timelines. This means dates, and dates mean accountability. Share that with your chair. We would be on the phone and Doc would say something to me like, okay, how long is it going to take you? Or I would say to Doc, hey, Doc, I'll have it done by this day. What's your schedule look like? How long until you think you can turn that around? No pressure, you're the chair, but please help me know so I can update my scope, my tasks, my milestones, my timeline, and stick to your plan and do whatever it takes to hit those milestones on those dates. That will be a huge benefit to you. Number 3, this all ties together, but act on your chair's suggestions. I mean, my dad used to have a saying. He would get us kids in a room, and he would tell us something. Maybe it was a chore that he was getting on to us about something. Probably we did something, pulled some boneheaded stunt in the house or something, or broke something, knowing me as a child. And my dad would say something like, I'm not saying this to hear my head rattle. It was just funny to me. It always stuck with me in life. In other words, he was saying, I'm not just telling you this just for no reason at all. I'm telling you this so that you learn something. Do yourself a favor and act on your chair's suggestions, okay? They're not saying it to hear their heads rattle. They have a purpose, and there's a reason why they're encouraging you and trying to get you to do something in the framework of your writing. So just listen and do it. Be actionable. Make a note. Have your paper and pen in hand when you're talking to them, because when they're done with you, they're going to another student, and you have got to take notes so that you can immediately act and implement what they're telling you to change in your writing. The next rule for success would be to hit your deadlines. I know this sounds repetitive, but it's true. At nearly any cost necessary, stay up all night if you need to, then go to work, take your kid. Been there, done it. Listen, and I bought the t-shirt. Stay up late, get the work done, take your kid to school, go to work, and then go back to dissertation work again. But hit the deadline, get it done. And then the last rule for success, and again, super, super important here, be transparent with your chair. These folks are like you and me. They have lives, they have people they're involved with, they have relationships, they have jobs, they have careers, and they want to help you as well as part of their career. So just be transparent and open and honest. Don't hide anything. Honest communication is the best policy. And may I just also make a friendly suggestion? In the spirit of being transparent, don't fib to your chair, okay? Don't say, yeah, I can turn this around in a week if it's going to be 2 weeks, okay? Be open and honest and transparent If you don't understand, ask the doggone question. Just ask them. I've ran into so many students that have said things like, well, I'm afraid my chair's not going to understand what I'm going through, or they're not going to, they're going to hold me accountable to this. I'm not going to be able to make my deadline. Well, if you don't share what you're dealing with, then they're not going to be able to help you at all. You have to remember that the chair, the school is in your corner, not against you, they're for you. And you need to remember that. But those are kind of my tips for success. Do you have anything to add to that, Dr. D?
I know, I think that is all part of why you did succeed so quickly. So next. And this is just a little twist for those of you that are coming in as a transfer student. It could also be universal. If you're transferring in, even if you had a challenging experience at your prior school, the reasons for your transfer could be many. Some it's location, some it's family obligations or whatever, and then they have to come back. You know what it's like, which many doctoral students don't. They're new to it. And so you do have that advantage. You probably have a study idea that's much more solidified than the average doctoral student just starting. So use that as an advantage. And I would encourage you to come in. You've already paid. You've already got the financial aid. You've already made the enrollment. Come in with a sense of optimism. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your classmates. And just a little bit of thing, a little other thing that I'll say, that it sounds a little corny, but I really do mean it. This is the reason I'm here. You owe it to your study participants. You owe it to the field that you're working in to produce excellence, nothing less. And so that requires the best of you. When did you ever do something excellent by accident or when you weren't even thinking? It requires intentionality, it requires resiliency, it requires help, guidance, and commitment, all of those things. So come in with optimism. Hang on one sec. And do your best to be part of that chain of excellence as well. So if you come in and you're like, oh my God, I don't know, I have imposter syndrome, I shouldn't even be here, it's too hard. You got to just leave that at the door, and you got to say, these people invited me in, they screened me, they said I'm qualified, this chair made a commitment to work with me, these classmates inspire me, I'm gonna just go. And I'm here to produce excellent work, to contribute to whatever field you're in, to make a difference, to be a change agent, just go with it. Now, that being said, life is there. Life intervenes. You may have to stop for a period of time. You may have to recover. I've had students deal with everything under the sun, including hurricanes, earthquakes, pandemics, measles outbreak, deaths in the family, illness of a child, on and on and on. So that's just going to happen. And we navigate around it and we keep going forward. That's what we do. And I've certainly had students who have had one or more of those challenges. And guess what? They all got through 100%, producing work that has the potential to really be transformative. And that's why I do what I do. Okay, and I think your family, Josh had to explain to his family and ask for a little more time and patience, but family is big. They just have to know that you're not going to be business as usual, mom or dad or brother or sister or aunt or uncle or husband or wife. You're just not. It's going to take a commitment. It's often a whole family commitment. And at a certain point, they might be over that commitment, but you have to keep going, even when they are impatient with you. You have to keep going, and then you're done. And one of the highlights of my life has been the Trident graduation. I just can't even tell you. I could start crying right now. The emotions are so overwhelming. The magnitude of the achievement is so great. And there, the family is like, yay, you did it. When there were definitely times when the family was like, again, you got to work on that. So it's tough, but they will be with you at the end, and they will grasp everything that you were striving for. Yeah, so that's all I have on that. What do you have next? Next, we have questions. So just the key here is be real, but be wildly ambitious, right? This is a big thing, but it's not the average thing, but you still got to be ambitious. You've got to be real about your limitations when they come and go, and just be a genuine person who has come here to contribute to positive change. And that tends to work a lot of that out. That's part of your motivation. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. everyone. And I do have to echo Dr. Deegan's statements on graduation. Our graduation is a lot of fun, and she really practices what she preaches, because I think every year I attend the doctoral hooding ceremony, and I feel like she's hooding half of the candidates or graduates on stage.
It's very sad that it has to be virtual this year, because that's really, I just have rarely been in an environment like that where it's such a thrill.
Yeah, and when she was talking about that a couple minutes ago, out of curiosity, I pulled up the doctoral hooding list from the past few years, and my memory actually wasn't too bad there. It was quite a few names, so she definitely works with a lot of students. And speaking of a lot, we do have quite a few questions that have come in, and I want to start with Dr. Deegan on this one. What are the reasons in the past that Trident students were unable to complete their doctoral degree?
Well, the only one that I know about personally was illness. Everyone else completed. Some taking longer than others, but they persevered. They did this, they did that. They got through it. We made it as much of a team effort as possible. But the only student that I know has been illness. We certainly have had students that I've heard about where we have Trident has many students who are active duty or even reservists who are called up, and sometimes you can continue. It's not so challenging. You can continue online, and sometimes you can't. Depends on your duty assignment and what you're going to be asked to do. So you have to take a break, and then it may be better for you to rethink what you're doing. But the only challenge that I know about for a student has been their personal illness, which is real. You know, you can only do so much with that sometimes.
That's right. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Yancey, what was the hardest thing during your doctoral process in balancing your work and life with your schoolwork?
That's a great question. I think the most difficult thing was, the answer to that is in the question, I think. It was finding the balance between everything. You know, and I even made a comment, I believe, earlier on in our recording here, in our live session, about finding balance. And the truth is, when you're talking about balance, it doesn't mean that everything is equal. That's not what that means. In fact, things will be unequal at times, but you're going to have to figure out how much time you need to commit to the study so that you can be more balanced, well balanced later. But I really had to work and develop in my calendar a schedule that would allow me to be dad and husband, and allow me to commit the time I needed, which was several hours a week, not 30 minutes a week, several hours a week, to my doctoral study, so that I could be Dr. Yancey at the end of it. But I also, for me, I was very candid about my opportunity to be successful in the doctoral role. I let my employer know about my ambitions. Now, I had an employer that was supportive of that. Now, I couldn't clock in for 8 hours a day and write my dissertation at work. Not even, listen, man, not even close to that, okay? I had to get my job done, and some weeks required more of me than others in my job. But I had to be balanced in that if I had to commit more time to my work during a week, then I would have to sit down with the family and say, Dad has to put this many hours into my doctoral studies. So I'm not going to have as much time this week with you, but I can change that on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon or whatever the case may be. But I had to work that out, and that goes back to your support network. I mean, it's hard to get this thing done if people don't support you, and nobody knows what you're walking through except for you and your chair, really. Your family, unless they have a doctorate, they're supportive, but they don't get it. They do not get it.
I like
and it's
to
not
say,
that they don't want to get it.
even if they do have a doctorate, they don't get it, because you're going through this now. And
Exactly.
It's a pretty unique and overwhelming experience. But luckily, you can get through it.
It sure is. You can get through it, but you're going to have to find your own unique balance. There's not a one-stop shop to answer that question, but you're going to have to find that. Sit down with your calendar, 24 hours times 7 days a week, how much time you need to sleep, and then dice up the rest of it.
Well, next question, and this one very popular. We've had 5 people ask essentially the same question. Dr. Deegan, at what point in the program should students start connecting with prospective chairs? And sort of a sub-question to that, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I can speak to the College of Ed. We certainly have a list, so you can research those professors. As I said earlier, you don't need a subject matter mind meld with them. So if somebody's a special ed teacher and you want to research after school programs, that's okay. Just look at their background, look at their personality. Hopefully, if you're an entering doctoral student, you'll come upon multiple faculty members that you'll have in your classes, and that's where you'll tend to get to know them. If you're a transfer student, the disadvantage is you don't know them. But the great thing is Trident's degree completion program really walks you through right up to the point where you start to engage with the chair. So you get a lot of advice. Sometimes it depends on availability. Sometimes it depends on serendipity. You ask me to be your chair and I've just agreed to be somebody else's, so I have to say no because I have to give you enough time. So there's more of an art to it than just a science. But I would say it's never too soon to start researching people and start thinking, what do you want in a chair? What do you expect? But you might not, you might not be emailing those people because they couldn't possibly make a decision when you just started the doctoral program. They'll make that decision with you probably about 3/4 of the way through, or maybe 2/3 of the way through. Then you'll engage with your chair. And degree completion students will engage with the chair after, you'll pick one after 2 quarters are complete. You'll engage with them after 3 quarters through the program. So I wouldn't say you'll get them near the end, but you certainly don't get them at the beginning. But it would behoove you to start thinking about that and reach out to other students. Reach out to other students from Trident alums, and then there will be the matrix of availability so that chairs don't have too many students so they can give you the time that you need. It's kind of a non-answer. I hate to not say it works exactly like this because it's hard, but your best source is going to be what you know about your professors as you go through the coursework. And if you transfer in and you don't know any other professors, don't worry. In your degree completion program, we will have you set up to select a chair.
Great advice. And let's see, next question we have. Oh, and I did want to put in one more comment. Given that each school is a little different, and we do have participants on the webinar who are in the DBA program or DHA, I urge you to reach out to your respective directors to answer this question and some others that are similar. And if you don't know who that is, in the DBA program, your director is Indira Guzman, and in the DHA program, your director is Ryan Dwight. If you need email addresses, just message us and we'll get those to you.
And they'll also know who's available to chair. Yeah.
And next question we have, this one, I'm going to start this one out with Dr. Yancey for specifics to him, but then go to Dr. Deegan for kind of general specifics from other students. And question is, Dr. Yancey, how many hours a week did you commit to completing your coursework?
Can I just say, don't you love the sound of Dr. Yancey?
Oh man, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I do love the sound of that. It has a nice ring to it. Thanks, Dr. Deegan. I appreciate it. Yeah. You know what? It depended on the week, but it was nothing for me to put in 15 to 20 hours a week. And I'm going to tell you, if you're not used to working for extensive periods of time to get this thing done, now's the time to rethink, how can I go to bed a little bit earlier? Can I take less time at dinner? I'm serious. Can I get up at 4:30 a.m.? When I was in my, now to be completely fair, and it's a great question, by the way, and I appreciate you asking it, Daniel. To be completely fair, there were a few weeks where I put in 7 or 8. I'm just continuing to research, or Dr. Deegan, by the way, was very quick to get my material back to me. But that, you might be waiting for 4 days or 5 days. If that's the case, you don't want to let the grass grow under your feet. If there's anything you can be doing that, and your chair will tell you what that is. But that may take less time than sitting down and writing. But so there are weeks where you won't spend 15 to 20, but that easily is what I spent. And I will tell you, into the finalization of your dissertation. In the School of Education, of course, we have this very awesome, I think it's awesome, this practical applicative piece that you write for your study that you can basically use immediately in the field, which I think is great. It's one of the things I loved about the TU dissertation process. And so when I was hitting that and I was trying to get done by a certain date, I will promise you that was my second job, full on. 30 hours. I can promise you I stayed up till 3 or 4 a.m. writing and rewriting and getting done and then editing and then having an editor friend of mine look at it too and saying, what am I misspelling? Am I missing anything? And let me just end with this and I'll be quiet. But I guess the chief paramount question I would ask in response to that is, how fast do you want to get done? Do you want to spend another 6 years? Or do you want to get done? And if you want to get done, you put in whatever time is necessary without, without completely exhausting your family, but you've got to get it done. So if it takes 20 hours, 25 a week, do that. Get up at 4:30 a.m., work until 7 a.m. when you get the kids out of bed and go to work. Then put in 2 hours when you get home. And that 20 hours gets there pretty quickly. But you'll be surprised at how quickly you can get done if you put that amount of time in. Dr. Deegan, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, that's what I did.
One of the things I really try to do for my students, as Josh mentioned, is that you're never waiting around. If you're waiting, here's something else that you can do. So I have a number of techniques that I use with my students, the goal of which are to lift the burden of the whole big thing off your shoulders, because the whole big thing is what paralyzes you. It's overwhelming. How can I ever get it done? So just do this, just do that. And some students really have to avert their eyes and just look at that, because the whole big thing at certain periods in your life are pressing down on you, and you just can't fathom how you're going to get it done. So I never want any student to wait, even if they're waiting for me technically to give them feedback. I want you to be working on something else. And I try to slice and dice those something else's so that they take away the oppressive feeling of, I've got to do this whole thing. How can I get it done? And it's based on an experience that I had when I was a doctoral student. I was so tired all the time. And I'd go to my notebook or open my file and or pick up an article back when we used to print them out and highlight them with a highlighter. Remember that? Some of you are unfamiliar with that process, but that's cool. I'd open up my article and I'd be like, it's already highlighted. Like, when did I read that? What elf, went through and highlighted? I wouldn't even remember having done it. So I learned to do things in really small components and just put them aside. And then next thing you know, you have a big stack and you've really made progress, because I couldn't handle the whole big thing. So that's just another tip. Don't wait around ever. You're always working on something. And the way you modulate big time commitment this week, lesser time commitment that week, still has to be chipping away at the components of your stuff.
That's exactly right. I mean, but you will be successful by attacking it like that.
Great, thank you. And we're going to shift back to Dr. Yancey. Since you like hearing that so much, I'll say it again, Dr. Yancey.
Thanks, Daniel.
But
thanks, man.
I'm just playing with you. But
I know.
Question for you, and this is something that I know a lot of doctoral students experience. And how were you able to narrow your passion down to a good study?
Oh man, these are really good questions. I mean, these are really spectacular questions that we're having here today. I appreciate these so much. The way to narrow down your passion, well, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit. I'm not trying to rinse and wash the same answer. I'm really not. But I cannot tell you how important it is to ensure that you are working alongside your chair with this information, because you might have 10 different ideas. Let's take servant leadership or spiritual leadership, for example. In fact, my study centered on spiritual leadership in education and training context in a for-profit organization. And so spiritual leadership has many different tentacles. It's far-reaching, and there are several different ways I wanted to go with that, but I had to hone in on the emphasis of spiritual leadership, the impact, the influence of it on the education and training components of a for-profit organization. And so the way I would recommend, if you're just trying to work up your pitch to your chair before you get with them and then help them provide that second filter for you, is I would, and this is what I did, but I would draw a funnel like you would use to add oil to a car. It's shaped like a tornado. It's just a little funnel and then you mark it up with a few lines to create your layers. And you start with your big topic, and then you begin to refine that as the funnel goes down. It might be spiritual leadership, and then below it might be education, spiritual leadership and education. But it needs to be drilled down further. So the next would be education of what, where, who, why, how. Maybe it's spiritual leadership in the education and training components of a K through 12 in a school district in Columbia. I don't know. Whatever it is, you need to continue to funnel and hone it down until it's specific enough that your chair signs off on it. That's really the goal, because they're going to be able to tell you if it's a workable study. So there's a lot of things that we're passionate about. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm passionate about the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sorry if you're a fan of the Chargers or somebody else, but that's what I'm passionate about a lot of things, passionate about football, passionate about basketball, but not all of those are things that I can do in a day, or watch in a day. But taking what you're passionate about and then using that funnel method. I know this is very generic because this is just a Q&A session. I wish I had a template to give you actually, but working that down into a solution that's amenable, it's flexible, and it's usable for a study, and then throwing that to your chair and working with that chair to be able to mold that into something that's workable for your dissertation. That's where you start. Am I right on that, Dr. Deegan?
Yes, and I would say, I'm very devoted to my work, but I'm not the world's greatest genius. I don't know everything under the sun. The reason that I can help you for the most part is I've seen more. You've done one, you're working on one. I've seen 1 million and I've read 1,000. So you want to do what? Oh, what about this? And I just start thinking and like, what about this? What about that? And students often look at me like, oh my God, I never would have thought of it. I'm like, yeah, I thought about it last week when somebody else did it, so we're just seeing a lot. And the term that I always use is doable. It has to be doable. And doable includes that component of you are passionate about it. Believe me, you cannot do a dissertation you don't care about. You just can't get it done. It's too hard. Nor can you scope one that's going to fly to the moon and back and change the planet. We don't have time. We only have a narrow window of time in which to get all this work done. So we start with what we know. We start with what we care about. We start with what is practical in the world, what just came up, what new law was passed, how you can react to it, and what people are hungry for. Most of my students, because again, I'm in the College of Ed, most of my students are practitioners somewhere in the chain of education, whether it's public ed, private ed, higher ed, K-12, preschool, whatever it is. And I often ask them, what study do you wish you had in your hand tomorrow? Okay, can we do that? Is it possible to do that? What research do you need? What would be so great to know? Can we do it? And so we sort of start there rather than this external idea of what makes a good study. That's often how students start. It's some big idea that they read about or they liked or they want to be a part of, but it's not practical. It's not doable. They either don't have the background or don't have the access or don't have the time. So we're trying to hone in on all of those things. And as Josh said at the end, we do, at least in my college, we deliver our work to the field. So it's really connected to what is useful, what is going to be a part of that change agency that we're scoping. So I've never met a student where we couldn't find an idea. I've met a student who was very dogged and clinging to an idea, and we had to go through many iterations to find a way to do that idea because all their instincts and the original attempts didn't work out. So that becomes a challenge, but I've never worked with a student who just was divorced from their idea. Usually they remain very passionate about it, and we just have to find a pathway that they can make it doable and maintain that passion.
I'll just say one more thing about that too. I think that's solid advice, but the passion has to be practical for the study. It just has to be practical. It has to be doable, as she said. You have to be able to get it done within your lifetime, okay? And then the other things that Dr. Deegan mentioned earlier on are another great answer. And those other ideas that align with your passion, man, those are fantastic. Go for it. Just do it in another study whenever you're done. But you want the thing that's going to be valuable, you're going to add value, but it's also workable for your personal and the school's timeline to get you to dissertation completion as well.
Great, thank you both. And we have time for one more question. There are a few questions that we did not get to, and those are ones that are more applicable to one's personal situation and will get back to you afterwards or direct you to your respective doctoral director to handle
Absolutely.
those. But,
and you can email us as well.
and we'll have emails on the final screen, so stay tuned for that. But final question, Dr. Deegan, what happens if you get a chair you don't get along with?
We'll make a change. We'll make a change. You drive that relationship, but I will caution you, if you don't get along because you won't listen, right? If you don't get along because you're so focused on doing one thing and it's not practical, if you've been getting good advice and you reject it, making a change isn't going to cure that. But sometimes people don't just get along, and we will make a change. The goal here is for you to succeed, not for your chair's ego or anything like that. But it's not something we do lightly, but it's not something that is climbing a mountain to do. The end game here is that your work shines, that it's connected to your passion, that it meets very high academic standards, and that it's something you can do. And if your chair can't be a partner to that, you'll find another chair. I've come in as second or even third chair multiple times, and we've been very successful with that. So you can make that shift.
And Dr. Yancey, anything to add to that? Maybe put yourself in the shoes of a student who didn't get along with your chair, and how the best way to go about rectifying that.
You know what, Daniel? Again, man, great questions. These are fantastic. And you know what? They're real world questions. They have them because they've ran into those situations. That's why these folks listening have these questions. The same questions I had. Guys, these are the guys and gals. These are the same questions that I asked. So putting myself in the shoes, as you said, Daniel, I was there. That was me. And so not at TU, at a different university. And my first chair retired. My second chair was the moving target and was invisible, could not land any tactical, reasonable responsibilities and delegated work from that person. And then I requested a different chair, and the third chair just wouldn't support my study at all. And so I left, and I had no problems with Dr. Deegan at all. That's why I just keep throwing roses over there, because she was awesome, fantastic. But if you do, you need to really do it. If you want to request a different chair, here's a couple things. Number one, and Dr. Deegan alluded to this, but you have got to look in the mirror first. Self-check. You, as a student, especially a longtime student, you become so used to rewriting and reworking that sometimes we as students have become jaded. That may not be the situation for any viewer or listener, but for me, I may have been that way a little bit. And so as a result, you become hardened to good, practical, solid advice to somebody who wants to help you. So look in the mirror first. Make sure it's not you. Okay, number one. Secondly, reach out to somebody beside your chair when you're thinking about switching. If that chair's been with you for 6 months and you've been able to have good progress, maybe it's just a simple disagreement that you can really talk to your chair about and you can work through. I wouldn't try to jump ship unless I absolutely had to, because in many ways you have to kind of hit the reset button a little bit. But third, also, if you've crossed through points number 1 and 2 and you're going, I need a change, hey man, TU's ready to help you. So you can absolutely make the change, but be bold enough to request it, but have your ducks in a row, okay? Don't just say I need a new chair because Sally doesn't like to meet on Wednesday. That's not a good reason. You have to have a good, valid reason with data, to support it as to why you want the change. But hey, the school will work with you, which is the great thing. And that's where I'll leave it as an answer to this conversation, because the school wants to see you succeed, whether that means staying with your current chair or shifting to somebody else. You'll get done.
And one thing I will add to that is I've had a number of students who, no, I don't want to go that way. I know you're giving me good advice, but this is the way I really want to do it. And mostly it's about logistics, this approach or that approach. And so I said, okay, well, you really want to do it that way? Let's, and I never would say to a student, I told you so, but when that way didn't work and we had to go back to, my emphasis on a practical way to get great data and have a great study, like I said, I didn't say I told you so, but I told you so for a reason. What I told you earlier was to try to get you through and understanding some of those pitfalls that were going to come, because I've had students who have been through this before, and I may have been through it myself. So you have to have that modicum of trust, and that's what gets to, if you don't, then it's the wrong chair for you. But sometimes the advice may be the same, just so you know. It may be delivered by in a different personality, a different way, and you have to feel that comfort level, but sometimes the advice may be the same. It's all born toward bringing you up and getting your work done and out there.
That's right.
Thank you, Dr. Deegan. Thank you, Dr. Yancey, and thank you for everyone for asking questions. Very, very interactive group this evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and
yes,
thank you for attending. And as a reminder, we will be sending the slide deck and the recording out later this week. You can visit the CORE webpage to see a list of some of the past CORE webinars, including a few featuring Dr. Deegan. Want to give a special thanks again to our presenters. Their contact information is on the slide right now. And thank you so much for all of your participation. Really great questions this evening. And goodbye. Have a great day.
Thank you, Daniel, for everything that you do in facilitating these discussions. They're really thrilled to be a part of it. It's a great privilege to talk to all of you, even though I can't see you. I like the little video windows to see everybody, but I'm glad that you were here, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, and
yes, best of luck to everyone.
And to cap things off, we will be having another CORE webinar next month, so look for details of that in your inbox soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.